The New York Times covered originally between 2011 and 2014. They covered in depth, Chevron's charge against you, this and that. But somehow, years later, once you were put under house arrest, I mean, we're right down the street from the New York Times, they have not covered this at all.
There's been a total silence from the New York Times and other large media companies, from CNN, MSNBC, NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox. I mean, they have completely ignored this story. It's journalists like you and other independent journals who covered it, and covered it well, and I thank you for that. Chevron's a major advertiser of the New York Times, and the New York Times' main lawyer on media issues is a guy named Ted Boutros Jr. He's a lawyer against me at the Gibson Dunn firm that coached the lying Chevron witness for 53 days.
Well, and I would also point out, I don't know about currently, but one of the New York Times' largest investors was Carlos Slim, who is a Mexican billionaire and involved in the fossil fuel industry. So. Yeah,
exactly. But I'll also say there was a person on the board of the New York Times who was also simultaneously on the board of Chevron. So the Times is conflicted. They're ignoring the story. Chevron's a major advertiser, and it just won't cover a story where there's a major human rights violation imposed on a U.S. attorney, 30-minute walk from their newsroom, while they're covering all sorts of stories involving human rights violations all over the world. Mm-hmm. So, I've lost a lot of respect for the New York Times. I think it's just really weak of them and to capitulate to Chevron in this way. I will say that, I have more support than I ever imagined I would get. 68 Nobel laureates, thousands of lawyers around the world have signed letters and petitions to Judge Presker urging my release. 6 congresspersons, including AOC and Jamie Raskin and Jim McGovern, Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib, Jamal Bowman, wrote a letter to Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, demanding he take back my private prosecution from the Chevron law firm. He hasn't responded, unfortunately. I think the Biden administration needs to step up and do something about this. I think this is an issue that reflects on their lack of respect for attacks on human rights lawyers, and I think if they're really serious about climate, you can't lock up the lawyers who are on the front lines protecting the planet and holding polluters accountable, and that's me. So, Biden, Garland, Congress, generally Congress have really not been there on this issue, and I think Jerry Nadler's my congressman, who's been completely silent. By the way, his son works for Chevron law firm.
Shocker.
And it's an embarrassment. I mean, all 3 of my elected representatives here in New York, Nadler, Schumer, and Gillibrand, have been completely silent. They all receive donations, lots of donations from lawyers at Chevron's Gibson Dunn law firm, and they're all conflicted. And it's just another example of how the Congress has been, completely influenced to do nothing about an important issue by campaign donations.
Well, I think your case, in my experience, is very interconnected to what's going on the ground in a lot of these cities, states, rural areas, because from basically Keystone onward to Standing Rock, now with Line 3 in Minnesota, a lot of smaller fossil fuel projects, you have basically had a not even hidden, basically coalition of police working on behalf of the oil companies, to basically terrorize environmental activists, indigenous, non-indigenous. There was just a story about Line 3, how the police have been using basically torture techniques on the water protectors there protesting Line 3. And in Standing Rock's case, I was there, and I literally saw the police basically launching grenades at unarmed people, pepper spray, rubber bullets at point-blank range, and then after the fact, the government under Trump paid back. Federal money went to this area in North Dakota for their legal enforcement, and you're seeing this kind of conglomeration. All the same pattern is on behalf of oil companies.
Yeah.
Chevron, Enbridge, Energy Transfer Partners. We know that local state officials, mostly Republicans, have been pushing to create laws to basically criminalize protests, where it would be, you'd be okay if you ran over a protester in some states. I mean, this is extremely dangerous because I think it really just boosts up this propaganda of eco-terrorism.
Well, I think you make an important point. I think what's happening to me, locking me up is very much part of the trend you're talking about. I mean, the fossil fuel industry has a lot of power and a lot of money, and they are spreading it around to change laws in a way that punish free speech, punish protesters, lock up lawyers who hold them accountable, make up charges, control the federal judiciary through the Federalist Society and through judicial appointments. I mean, it's extraordinary the amount of power they have. I don't think that's appropriate, in a democratic society for any industry to have that much power. I mean, in Line 3, the issue now in Minnesota with the pipeline, Enbridge is paying local police millions of dollars. And these are the police who are arresting indigenous peoples for trying to protect their own territory from the pipeline company. So, the privatization of public functions is an important issue for our society. You see that, with Enbridge at Line 3. You see that in my prosecution by Chevron, where they directly took control of the prosecutorial function. You're seeing it in the rainforest of Brazil and Ecuador, where the militaries of those countries are being loaned to the oil companies to act as private security to secure their investments. So you're seeing the privatization of public functions in lots of different places in our society. The most dangerous places are obviously police, courts. You're also seeing it in prisons. And I think it's just wrong, and I think it needs to be stopped. I mean, what's happening to me goes way beyond me. I mean, this really goes to what kind of society we want to have in the United States of America. I mean, if you have corporations prosecuting their adversaries, you do not live in a rule of law country. What's happening to me is about Chevron and the fossil fuel industry, in my opinion, intimidating lawyers and activists and advocates and not doing this kind of critically important work to save our planet. And, that's why they're trying to make such a big thing out of Steve Donziger. They want people to see what happens to me and to be scared so they don't do the work. And I would encourage people not to see what's happening to me that way. Really, I see what's happening to me as a function of our success. That the people of Ecuador figured out a way to, work with lawyers from around the world, get financing so they can do a legal case, and they won the case. And because of that success, their lawyers, including me, are being attacked. So it's a sign of success. It's a sign that Chevron is feeling risk and feeling heat over this, as they should. And ultimately, I'm optimistic that the people of Ecuador will prevail, and I'll personally get through this situation that I'm in the